what's up guys? Matt here. Welcome to a book review. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I've got a little bit of time alone, so we'll see how this goes. I've got my notes up. We're going to be talking about American Sphinx, the character of Thomas Jefferson by Joseph J. Ellis. My first non-fiction read after reading an incredible amount of fantasy fiction. So this will be kind of an odd review for me. If you've not watched my other videos, I highly recommend you check those out. I also have a website that has my book reviews and my ramblings and such. But I wanted to read this book and get into reading nonfiction and reading nonfiction. Really is what I want to get interested in and want to read more. I talked about reading nonfiction as in presidential biographies and American history. That's something I'm pretty interested in, and I think this, at least for me, having only read this one book, has been a great introduction. I will say the writing for this particular book, and I'll get into my review thoughts and things like that in a second, but reading this, a American history biography, compared to reading something like a Brandon Sanderson, for those of you who don't know, Brandon Sanderson is a fantasy author. This was a very highly thought out prose, as is Brandon Sanderson. But what I was learning about here in American Sphinx, the character of Thomas Jefferson, by the end of my reading time, I needed a break. With Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan and J.R.R. Tolkien, those authors in those fantasy worlds, they create such a narrative that really makes you want to not stop reading. But the American Sphinx, the character of Thomas Jefferson, had such, what I feel like is such a high brow prose. It was a lot of took a lot of thought to pay attention to the words. That is not to say I loved this. I really enjoyed this book. I learned so much about Thomas Jefferson and the writing of the Declaration of Independence, his life in Monticello, his life as president. This book was broken up in, and I'll just give you a bit of a synopsis of the book. This is the character of Thomas Jefferson. It is a biography. Thomas Jefferson may be the most important American president, and he is certainly the most elusive. That's what the American Sphinx title comes from. It is a great dive into Thomas Jefferson. I really appreciate it. I did want to first, I'm jumping around a lot. I apologize. I've got my notes here. I might not even really read the notes. I'll just kind of talk about what I want to talk about. I want to read something here and talk about the prose. This is on page 157 of my copy. Let me just read you some of the prose. I am not an audiobook author or narrator or anything like that, but let's just read some of the prose. The net result of all these influences was a somewhat tortured position on slavery that combined unequivocal condemnation of the institution in the abstract with blatant procrastination whenever specific emancipation schemes were suggested. Yeah. I'm not that smart. I really enjoyed this book. It did take a little bit of my brain to read this. Now I say I'm not that smart. I'm about to graduate college with a computer science degree, but like That's computers, and that's not literacy and things like that. But let me just give you a breakdown of the contents of this book and see if you're interested in it. So we get a prologue. This is the Jeffersonian Surge. This is talking about, this is specifically 1992 to 1993. This is America, the Jeffersonian Surge, where the memorials and all of the things, and Thomas Jefferson is back in the zeitgeist of conversation in the 1990s. So that's something. And then the first chapter begins in Philadelphia, 1775 to 1776. So that is right on the cusp of Thomas Jefferson signing and creating the Declaration of Independence with other authors and things like that. But that is the 1776 is then, but 1775 is when Thomas Jefferson basically when he comes on the scene. I really appreciate the first sentence. It brings out the grand entrance of Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia on June 20th, 1775. So just really cool stuff. That's chapter 1 or section 1, Philadelphia, 1775 to 1776. Next is Paris, 1784 to 1789. So we had a bit of a jump there. If you know your American history, you know 1789 was George Washington's start as president, and boy, I hope I'm getting that right. In reading this, and I hope I'm getting these dates right. There were an incredible amount of dates in this, which I found interesting and very enlightening. So that was Paris, 1784 to 1789. If you don't know, Thomas Jefferson was a bit of an ambassador to America through France. I said that correctly. Yep. He was in France, or in Paris at the time. Then he came back to Monticello, and this is chapter 3, section 3, Monticello from 1794 to 1797. Again, another bit of a jump. We do have some jumps between time periods, different year breaks, and that's just the nature of this book and this biography. It jumps around. The name suggests the character of Thomas Jefferson, and we certainly get that on this read, and it's awesome. I really, really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed it. Then we get Monticello from 1794 to 1797 was when Thomas Jefferson was a bit retired, quasi-retired. If you know your American history, and I will tell you right now, the next chapter is Washington, D.C., 1801 to 1804. Thomas Jefferson is President of the United States of America, so he did not retire. He came out of retirement. And that is just 4 years there. Thomas Jefferson would go on to serve another 4-year term as president. We don't get that in this book. We get 1801 to 1804, and then it jumps to 1816 to 1826, the end of Thomas Jefferson's life, and this is again in Monticello. So yeah. And then we have an epilogue, and then we have a note on the Sally Hemings scandals. Sally Hemings was a slave of Thomas Jefferson, and did he have a child or multiple children with Sally Hemings? I will let you do your own research and let the book tell you if that occurred or not. Now, Thomas Jefferson's views on certain things. I've got my notes here because I want to kind of parse through what I wanted to say. Thomas Jefferson's views on certain things like slavery are hard to understand for me in the 21st century. Yeah, 21st century. I'm stuck in the 18th century here, in 19th century. Being that it's been nearly 200 years of hindsight for me to look at. It's crazy. Thomas Jefferson had such contradictory thoughts on slavery. Even the Declaration of Independence, all men created equal. Yet, he continued to have slaves until his death. He had 130 slaves at the time of his death that were sold to the highest bidder at the time in 1826. So, He also did not believe, and again, these are what I've gleaned from this biography. He believed that different races could not be in harmony together or live in harmony together. So I vehemently disagree with that. And that's I'll leave it there. I will leave that there. That's a topic. If we want to talk about it, we can talk about it. That's my beliefs. Now, I'm reading another book that I'll talk about in another video because I think it's important. I want to talk a little bit more about slavery, just in the general sense, in another book that I'm going to be reading and talking about. So, okay, that's my Thomas Jefferson biography review. I have a lot that I said in my written review that I'd love for you to check out on my Goodreads or my website. But yeah, that's where we're at. Okay. All right. I'm going to read some more nonfiction. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This was my review of American Sphinx, The Character of Thomas Jefferson by Joseph J. Ellis. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you in another video. Peace.